This is another sign of the times, an analysis and a commentary. Global carbon dioxide emissions show the biggest jump ever recorded. Global emissions of carbon dioxide from fossil fuel burning jumped by the largest amount on record last year, upending the notion that the brief decline during the recession might persist through the recovery. Emissions rose 5.9% in 2010, according to an analysis released by the Global Carbon Project, an international collaboration of scientists tracking the numbers. Scientists with the group said the increase, a 500 million extra tons of carbon pumped into the air, was almost certainly the largest absolute jump in any year since the Industrial Revolution, and the largest percentage increase since 2003. The increase solidified a trend of ever-rising emissions that scientists fear will make it difficult, if not impossible, to forestall severe climate change in coming decades. In other words, changing the composition of the Earth's atmosphere will also change the climate, because the Earth is a living being in some kind of sense, and it will react to changes in the atmosphere. The researchers said the high growth rate reflected a bounce back from the 1.4% drop in emissions in 2009, the year the recession had its biggest impact. They do not expect the extraordinary growth to persist, but do expect emissions to return to something closer to the 3% yearly growth of the last decade. Still a worrisome figure that signifies little progress in limiting greenhouse gases. The growth rate in the 1990s was closer to 1% yearly. The combustion of coal represented more than half of the growth in emissions, the report found. In the United States, emissions dropped by a remarkable 7% in the recession year of 2009, but rose by just over 4% last year, the new analysis shows. This country is the world's second largest emitter of greenhouse gases, pumping at least 1.5 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere last year. The United States was surpassed several years ago by China, where emissions grew 10.4% in 2010, with that country injecting at least 2.2 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide emissions are usually measured by the weight of carbon they contain. The new figures come as delegates from 191 countries meet in Durban, South Africa, for yet another negotiating session in a global control effort that has been going on with minimal success for the better part of 2 decades. Each year that emissions go up, there's another year of negotiations, another year of indecision, said Glenn P. Peters, a researcher at the Center for International Climate and Environmental Research in Oslo, and a leader of the group that produced the new analysis. There's no evidence that this trajectory we've been following the last 10 years is going to change. These are more signs. Scientists say the rapid growth of emissions is warming the Earth, threatening the ecology and putting human welfare at long-term risk. But their increasingly urgent pleas that society find a way to limit emissions have met sharp political resistance in many countries, including the United States, because doing so would entail higher energy costs. This is what happens when everything is done in the name of money. The new figures show a continuation of a trend in which developing countries, including China and India, have surpassed the wealthy countries in their overall greenhouse emissions. In 2010, the combustion of fossil fuels and the production of cement sent more than 9 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere. The new analysis found, with 57% of that coming from developing countries. Emissions per person, though, are still sharply higher in the wealthy countries, and those countries have been emitting greenhouse gases far longer, so they account for the bulk of the excess gases in the atmosphere. The level of carbon dioxide, the main such gas, has increased at least 40% since the Industrial Revolution. On the surface, the figures of recent years suggest that wealthy countries have made headway in stabilizing their emissions. But Dr. Peters pointed out that in a sense, the rich countries have simply exported some of them. The fast rise in developing countries has been caused to a large extent by the growth of energy-intensive manufacturing industries that make goods that rich countries import. All that has changed is the location in which the emissions are being produced, Dr. Peters said. Many countries, as part of the response to the economic crisis, invested billions of dollars in programs designed to make their energy systems greener. While it is possible those will pay long-term dividends, the new numbers suggest they have had little effect so far. The financial crisis was an opportunity to move the global economy away from a high emissions path, said a scientific paper about the new figures, released online by the journal Nature Climate Change. Our results provide no indication of this happening. Yes, climate change, or whatever have you call it, is real, and it's happening right now. In other words, global warming, or climate change, is producing more extreme weather, hotter summers, colder winters, more droughts, more floods, all kinds of extreme weather events, and they are increasing. I have been studying the weather for some 42 years, and it has changed dramatically. This, too, is another sign of the times, the end times, transition days, which is a time of extraordinary changes, happenings, and events. It all comes down to what kind of world are we leaving to the future generations, and that should be a very important question to ask. Again, Mark chapter 13, verse 7. And when ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, be ye not troubled, for such things must needs be, but the end shall not be yet. 8. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be earthquakes in divers places, and there shall be famines and troubles. These are the beginnings of sorrows. Luke chapter 21, verse 34. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with partying and drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. 35. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. 36. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that are coming to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Revelation chapter 11, verse 14. The second woe is past, and, behold, the third woe comes quickly. 15. And the seventh angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven, saying, The nations of this world are becoming the nations of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Yes, it's time for all these prophecies to happen, and these are more signs.